Hey everybody, it's Josh Rutledge, your co-host for FearScape Paranormal Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to support us more, please head over to our website, FearScapePodcast.com. There you can click on store and browse some really awesome t-shirts and maybe pick a couple up, or even go to our Patreon page and see how you can support us monthly. We love bringing you awesome content just as much as you like listening to it. Enjoy the show.
Hello. I'm so glad you could join us. I hope you brought your blanket to hide under. The spooky crew is going to discuss things and events from other realms. Ghosts, cryptids, aliens. Be sure to hold your blanket extra tight as the boys take you deep into the FearScape.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another fantastically frightening episode of FearScape Paranormal Podcast. Wowsy McWowzerson, do we got an episode for you. My name is Stefan Gearhart. I'm your host for the evening, and I am joined, as always, by my vampirific co-host with the most hostess, Josh Rutledge.
Man, you know what? I could really go for a hostess cupcake right now, and you just put that in my mind. I don't know.
Yep, the hostess with the hostess cupcake. That's what you are.
Yep.
That's what you are. So, but yeah, we got a humdinger because we're back doing another topic. I'm really excited about doing that. We've had a lot of getting spooky the last couple of weeks. Just, between our contacts and Keith Age's contacts, man, they were just one after another, which is fine with me, but I'm excited to share a little something, and get some knowledge out there.
Right. It's a little education.
Some education. That's exactly what we're trying to do here. Yeah. So we're going to be talking about the Men in Black, not the movie with Will Smith, nor the one with Chris Hemsworth, but the actual Men in Black, the ones that were made popular throughout the ages. But I know John Keel, Mothman Prophecies, talked about them quite a bit. A lot of different books talked about it. There's one in particular that I'm thinking of. I think maybe it was Gray Barker that wrote it. Yeah, so Gray Barker wrote his. I think he was one of the first ones to devote a book to the Men in Black. But yeah, we're going to be talking about the Men in Black, those people or creatures that tend to be around when abductions and UFO sightings happen. Are they of the government? Are they of the other world? I don't know.
We will discuss. We'll opine, the word that I like to use.
we will opine. But before we get into that, we got our list of segments to get through. So let's start off with our psychic word of the week. As usual, this comes from the Encyclopedic Psychic Dictionary from June Bletzer. I think this is back in 1986. I bibliomanced this book and opened up to a page that we've actually been on before, but a different one grabbed my eye this time. And the phrase that popped out this time was imaginary ghost. And imaginary ghost is this. It is an energy field that is brought into being by the sitters of a psychic circle who meet regularly. Sitters decide upon a name, make up a personal history for it, concentrate on it, and encourage the name to perform physical phenomena. Eventually, the energy field created by the unity, desire, and persistence of the group will perform for them. For example, it might tip a table or rap on the wall or even bring psychic information. It may be that an etheric world intelligence steps in to fill the desires of the sitters.
So it's like, it's almost like a, I don't know, this is probably not exactly correct, but what kind of popped into my head was like you're making a vessel. And because there's like an empty shell, some actual spirit energy that may not be able to or may not want to interact on its own can then use that shell like a puppet.
Yeah. It's funny. It almost reminds me of whatever the phrase was, either last week or the one with the mysterious J, where they essentially conjured a being into existence.
Well, no, that was with Vashti, and that we were talking about the energy. I can't think what it's called, but when you get a lot of people in the room together or whatever,
yeah,
and they all
use that psychosomatic brain you got, man.
It's like no, I'm not gonna have it. I'm not gonna have. It's like etheric energy, or I don't know. Anyways, I don't know. But yeah, it's the same type thing. It's like all the positivity of the crowd forms this energy type being, if you will, and that being's intentions are that of whatever the crowd's intentions are, and it in turn feeds the crowd into getting more and more energetic. And so this is kind of the same thing. The difference here is that in that case, the crowd is the puppet master, if you will,
right?
Or potentially the energy is the puppet master of the crowd, maybe. But in this case, the people doing the work, I don't know, the psychics or whatever the case may be, they're creating the energy, and then something else is coming in and interacting with it.
Mm-hmm.
There's 3 parties involved as opposed to 2 parties in the other one.
Yep. Man, I wish I could remember what the heck that other word was. Oh, was it mass elemental? That's what
it is. Yeah, I knew it had an E in it.
Yep.
So yeah,
very, very, very similar in a way, for sure. Very, very interesting to to randomly have come across something similar.
Well, and also it kind of, I think, fits in line with something that I was talking with you and Santosh about just like last week maybe, or we something about can you have as you can you have accidental manifestations from an individual? Like,
right.
you're just, your mind is tuned in, or a group of people are tuned in, and you create that accidental manifestation. And it's kind of the same thing. In this example, it's a purposeful manifestation. What I was talking with you guys about is it's more of a, you don't know what you're doing. You accidentally did what this thing is talking about. So
yeah, for sure.
Anyway,
yeah, very, very interesting. I always wonder, the words that we pick, is it gonna influence what happens to us over the next week? That's what I always think about. So I'll be thinking about that as well. But yeah, go ahead.
Is there a psychic word for like win the lottery or something? I mean, maybe we should pick that one next time.
It's called cheat. Yeah, for real though. No, but let's go ahead and get into spooky news, all right? So I've got 2 stories for you this week for spooky news. One kind of interesting one, and one is a little bit of verification, which is kind of fun. But the first one that I have this week for spooky news comes from the BBC in Scotland. So it's actually, again, we're talking about Scotland, but this time it's not about the Loch Ness Monster. It's as you may know, I've been getting into genealogy a lot. I've recently found a long lost sister that I had never met. And so I've been getting very, very into genealogy. And so I was actually searching for genealogy when this popped up. And it's a year or 2 old, but it's still very, very interesting. The headline reads that Scottish witchcraft book published online. And this is a 350-year-old book that was used to record the names of those accused of witchcraft in Scotland. And they went ahead and published it online on Ancestry.com, actually. This has the name of the witches in Scotland. It's from 1658, and it was drawn up during a time when the persecution of supposed witches was rife. The book also lists the towns where the accused lived, as well as notes of confession. It is also believed to have folk medicine spells and things like that and such within there, as well as notes that give small insights into the lives of those accused. A majority of those accused, of course, were women. Though the records do reveal that some men were also persecuted, it goes on to list a number of different people that were in there. It's to give a little history on it. It says the passing of the Scottish Witchcraft Act in 1563 made witchcraft or consulting with witches capital crimes in Scotland. It is estimated that between 3,000 and 5,000 women were publicly accused of being witches in the 16th and 17th century Scotland. And of course, we're only talking about Scotland. It was a much higher number in England. And yeah, this was insane. And there's a story that goes on to one of the things that they found in there. But this essentially gives us a fleeting view of a world beyond orthodox medicine. And that these people that were healers and things like that were simply being accused of witchcraft. And it's kind of frightening and scary, especially me being pagan. And, you know, I'm like, no, I wonder if any of my relatives that were over there were witches, you know?
Yeah. Well, it makes you wonder too if well, you know, the whole thing with like the Salem witch trials and everything. It's been kind of rumored or whatever that all of that was really just because women were educating themselves.
Yes.
And so it was like, you know, if you learn math or science, you must be a witch. And so
for sure, there's a lot of that. For sure.
Yeah. And so I'm wondering, like, how much of the stuff, because, you know, you talked about it, a lot of for Scottish, a lot of them were women. And so I'm sure that a lot of them fell within that same kind of bucket of, you know, think about the movie, you know, the Disney, the Beauty and the Beast, which I know is based off something else that's more dark, but Belle would have been a witch.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
But anyways.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And there's a famous play, and it is my brain is not working at the moment, but it's all about the Salem witch trials. And you know, a lot of this was a woman refused a man, so he accused her of being a witch. Somebody's mad because they borrowed money, didn't pay him back. They accused him as a witch. They didn't like the way they smelled. They didn't like the way they looked. I mean, it was so easy to do it, especially during that time when the church was out.
Yeah.
You know, when they had these witchmaster generals that were out looking. It's like, you know, we always joke, oh, don't speed on the first and the end of the month because they got to get their quota. Well, that was the same thing with these witchfinder generals. You know, they were expected to have a quota.
Well, and this is a little geek out here, but I think we're introduced them in the Star Wars Clone Wars the cartoon series,
mm-hmm.
or actually I think it might have been actually Star Wars Rebels, but the enforcers that were like. They were like Sith, but they weren't Sith. Oh,
yeah, like the adjudicators or whatever they were called. Yeah.
And they were like they were hunting Jedi and things like that, but they weren't really Sith, and it was just real. So it's almost like that. It's like, you know, you're doing something that may be in line with the church, but is a little outside of the norm of the church, and so we're going to hunt you down and make an example out of you.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyways,
it's crazy. There's a lot of TV and movies that go and talk about it. Even the play, The Crucible. That's what it's called.
Okay.
Crucible. They made a movie about it too. Winona Ryder's in it. It's really, really good. But yeah, I mean, we're even watching a show called Outlander, and it's set back in like the 1700s in Scotland, and they're talking a lot, you know, because she's this woman that gets transported back from 1940s England back then, and so she was a nurse in the army, and so they're calling her a witch. They call her the White Witch, like, because she you know, she's able to heal people and do all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's really, and because she has immunizations, she's able to go into a ship full of smallpox and, you know, help people and not get it. So
well, and you know, then there's the show called The Witcher, but that's something different.
Yeah, that's a good show too. Good show. But anyways, the other piece of spooky news that I got for for you is some verification here. I actually posted this the other day on the website, but I wanted to, or excuse me, on the Facebook page, but I wanted to reshare this again, that the Pentagon has officially released the UFO videos that Tom DeLonge and those guys to the Stars Academy released, and the Navy backed up. The Pentagon itself has officially released the 3 short videos showing unidentified aerial phenomena that had previously been released by, of course, Tom DeLonge and those guys. So this is really, really big news. And, you know, UFO is falling out of fashion. UAPs are now the big term, the unidentified aerial phenomena. And I think a lot of that has to do with the UFOs have such a negative connotation to it now.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, so the videos show what appear to be unidentified flying objects rapidly moving while being recorded by infrared cameras. 2 of the videos contain service members reacting in awe at how quickly the objects are moving. 1 speculates that it could be a drone. And of course, the Navy acknowledged earlier this year the veracity of the videos. They are officially releasing them now in order to clear up any misconceptions by the public on whether or not the footage that has been circulating was real or whether or not there are more videos. And this came from Sue Goff from the Pentagon. After a thorough review, the department has determined that the authorized release of these unclassified videos do not reveal any sensitive capabilities or systems, said Goff, and does not impinge on any subsequent investigations of military airspace incursions by unidentified aerial phenomena. And of course, now the Navy has their formal guidelines on how its pilots can report what they see. And it's just interesting, man, that the Pentagon is now coming out and saying, hey, yeah, here they are. They're still not saying necessarily that it's, you know, alien origin or anything like that, but they're basically saying, yeah, we don't really know what it is, but here it is. We've covered all of our butts. So
yeah, I mean, that's, you know, right. I mean, and I think that's where they're probably trying to get away from the whole UFO, because I think everybody hears UFO and thinks alien.
Yeah.
But really it's, you know, this is going to sound very redundant, but it's just unidentified. I mean, it could be anything. We just don't know what it is. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's alien. So, you know, it could be interdimensional, you know, I mean,
it could be Russia.
Could be, you know, it could be a rival U.S. faction. Who knows? Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? Why not? But, yeah, so I mean, it's a really nice vindication, I think, for those guys who, you know, that show what was called unidentified inside America. I think it was like Inside America's UFOs, blah, blah, blah. But they're supposed to be, I think they're coming out with the 2nd season.
They are, yeah.
So, and if you watch that show, what you saw a lot of in the last couple of episodes was them meeting with Congress to try to get the government to come out and officially say, yes, these are real. So
it's interesting. It's, you know, because you got Bob Lazar, you've got Steve Greer. Those are 2 of the big names that have been around for a very, very long time, that have been meeting with Congress and trying to get things done, especially Steve Greer. I just watched a documentary called Unacknowledged, and there's a new one getting ready to drop. It may already have dropped, called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And it's all about Steve Greer's, you know, stuff with the Congress, like that big, we're a bunch of leaders in the military and in Congress that all met like 15, 20 years ago. Steve Greer is the one that led that whole thing. And, but it's amazing that it took somebody like Tom DeLonge, who has a ton of money, to make things really start to happen. Yeah. And so, you know,
well, and Luis Elizondo, I mean, the fact he has quite the credentials.
Exactly.
We've talked about it before, in the credibility of a witness. And so basically the group that was put together are all highly credible people. The 3 videos that they're talking about are military videos. Again, highly credible people.
Yeah, they're impressive.
So it's not like, and I don't mean any disrespect, but it's not John Boy down in the holler, right?
Right.
Because for whatever reason, we've talked about this before, but for whatever reason, there's automatically an assumption of lack of credibility from John Boy in the Holler.
Well, and I told you, they talk about that in an unacknowledged. They talk about that the government used a smear campaign to take any credible witnesses out of the limelight and leave only the discredible, is that's the word, whatever, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The non-credible ones are the ones that were left on the news and things like that to make it look as if it were rednecks and losers and country folk and bumpkins or unintelligent people or you know, whatever. And I think that that's one of the reasons why there is a shift now over to the term UAP as opposed to UFO, because now the government's like, oh, people aren't panicking like we thought they would. They're far more interested in this. And I think that the conversation had to be rewritten to gain ground again.
Well, I mean, look at it this way, and whatever your take on the whole situation and the man or whatever, but Trump's announcement of the Space Force,
huge deal.
Huge. I mean,
deal.
Society accepted that. Yeah, that makes sense. We should have a force in space. That makes so. The fact that they're so willing to accept that we should have a force in space probably means that they would be willing to accept that. Yeah, for the last 500 years we've been visited by whatever, you know. So
oh yeah, I think a lot of people say they don't believe when they actually do. And for example, there were a lot of people, and one of the reasons why Donald Trump won, this is not a political thing I'm saying here, but is that they didn't want to vote for Hillary, but they were too afraid to tell anybody that they didn't want to. So they were telling people they were voting for Hillary, but walking into the booth and voting for Donald Trump, because they knew that he wasn't liked by a lot of people and that they were embarrassed about it. My dad was one of those. My dad told us he was voting Democrat until after the fact, and finally he admitted to it. He's like, no, I did it. I just couldn't do it. And this is kind of that same thing. Like, there's a lot of people that are like, oh no, I mean, UFOs, come on, nobody believes. Oh, we're believing that right now? Yes, I do. Yes, I do, right? So it's like they're waiting for their outlet to be able to finally say, yeah.
I think they're testing the waters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like here's these 3 videos that these guys came out with. Nobody freaked out. So okay, well let's have, you know, the president talk about the Space Force. Nobody freaked out. Okay, let's come out and openly admit that yes, these are valid videos. Nobody's freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, it's like, you know, baby steps. It's an incremental rollout of information.
I've actually been pretty surprised by the lack of social media sharing on this story that the Pentagon has done that. And I think it's because people are like, okay, whatever. I don't think it's it's hiding. Because no, I mean, when I search it, it's all over the place. I mean, just this story alone that dropped the other day, it's everywhere. So, but it's not being shared, you know, because it's not big news anymore. And I think that's exactly what you mean. They were testing the waters to see if it would be this huge ordeal that people would pack up their cars and leave, which I think they probably would have in the 50s and 60s.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, especially after World War II and things like that. Absolutely. But now,
you know, after, you know, before the space race, but after Sputnik, that whole period of time.
Oh yeah.
Would have been, you know, for sure. Definitely.
Yep. So, but yeah. So anyways, speaking of that, that's a good segue for us to get out of spooky news and move into our UFO sighting for the week. I know you said you got a good one for us. So let's go ahead and jump into the UFO sighting of the week. All right, what do we got? You said it's good, and let's hope.
Yeah. So this comes from Princeton, Indiana.
Okay.
This was on Monday, April 20th. So, you know, just 10 days ago?
Yeah.
Or so when we're recording this. So, here we go. Was outside at 3:20 and at 3:29 noticed funny light moving through the tree outside the back door. Once it got into a clear view, I noticed it was very unusual. Certainly not a normal craft, nor a drone. I got the binoculars for a closer look. and noticed it to be a triangular in shape, with 3 blue lights at each point, with one larger pulsating red light in the center. It looked to be up around 15 to 20,000 feet at approximately 45 degrees. I watched it move very slowly, occasionally picking up speed, then stop to hover, move some more, and then stop again. It then turned 180 degrees where it stood and moved north to south. It stopped for 5 seconds, became brighter, and then vanished with a speed impossible to follow. The event lasted 7 minutes. The sky was pretty clear, no moon, no other planes at the time. I waited for 30 minutes, but it never returned. Nothing I know of can take off at that kind of speed from a standstill. Hopefully someone may have seen it too.
Wow. That's intense.
That is intense.
Whew.
That's to be able to be. Now, I'll say that not everybody is as good at judging distance as they think they are. So
trust me, I can't play basketball to save my life.
I was never good at baseball because I could never figure out where the ball was in position to me.
You were just good at blowing your knee out while swinging a bat.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for that memory. So I don't know how much that I want to necessarily hone in on the fact of where it was in relation to 15 to 20,000 feet. However, it was close enough that with binoculars he could make out some details as far as like the lights and the shape. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty low in the sky, in my opinion, even with binoculars.
Well, and again, it's sitting within this Ohio Valley area. Looked up Princeton. It's about the same distance from Louisville to Evansville, except for Evansville is south of 64. Princeton is north of 64. They run north and south from each other. So if you go right, you'll go to Princeton. If you go left, you go to Evansville. So it's not too far. It's further than Holiday World, of course, but it's still within our area in a sense, 2-3 hours at max.
And just a quick side note, it's also probably in line with the Claude Beast of the Ohio sighting in the 50s.
Oh yeah, because that's Evansville
and Hopkins and Kelly. Yeah.
Yep. I'm actually looking right now. It is a straight shot down to Hopkinsville.
And if it moved north to south when it took off, that would have been in line with Hopkinsville, with Kelly.
Wow. I didn't even think about that when I was looking at this. Yeah, it's about 2 hours away from Louisville. And yeah, it's a straight shot down to get to Hopkinsville.
So, yeah, I'm not saying it's all related, but it's all related.
I'm not saying it's aliens. Aliens. But yeah, no, just like you said, Hopkinsville, Kelly, you go north, you hit that area of Evansville where they spotted the Claude Beast of the Ohio. You go north from there, you get to Princeton. It's, makes you wonder if that's some sort of ley line or something along the lines.
Cave system.
Yeah, or a cave system, which more than likely is. It's a hilly area for sure.
Yeah. Well, and we already, with the Claude Beast, they had the mud on the beast or whatever on the girl's leg that only comes from underwater caves, and so that was in Indiana. So you stand to reason that there could go farther up in. Well, in fact, I know that there's the whole Marengo cave system up in Indiana.
Oh yeah, dude, this is not far from like French Lick and Paoli and Jasper, like all big caves and mountain area. It's on the other side of the Hoosier National Forest, which is where all of those sit. So very, very interesting. Yeah, indeed.
Indubitably.
So that's a good one, man. That's a good one. I'm very, very interested in that. One piece of quick news as well. I didn't want to use it for a spooky news, but it fits right into here. But it looks like Elon Musk is going to be darkening his Starlink satellites. Did you see that?
I did.
Astronomers are getting really, really pissed off.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah, and frankly, people who are reporting UFO sightings are getting pissed off because they're being equated to Starlink, right?
They're being bombarded. I mean, we've even talked about it. It's like, I now have to question everything.
Right.
Like, and I hate that I got to question that now. Before it was like, oh, was that an airplane? Nope. Airplanes don't move that way.
Right.
Now it's like, oh, was that Starlink?
Yeah. What's unfortunate though is that this is every launch going forward will have this capability, but there are already 6 orbital paths, if you will, that are up there that won't. So
I didn't know if I didn't read the whole article, so I assumed he was going to kind of retrofit them.
No, so the way that they're doing it is, I read the whole article, is they're going to change the degree in which the solar panels are tilted. So when you see the stuff pass over, you don't really see the object; you see the glare off the solar panels.
Correct.
So they're going to change the degree in which they're tilted, so that it's not just much glare off of the solar panels when you see it from the Earth.
Yep.
So it's not actually a covering or anything that goes over the panels. It's just they're going to change the degree of the tilt.
That makes sense.
That it doesn't reflect as much.
All right. Well, we'll talk about reflecting and deflecting. Let's get into the Men in Black. Let's get into our topic for the week.
All right.
We work for a highly funded yet unofficial government agency.
We'll take it from here.
Who the hell are you?
INS Division 6.
There is no Division 6.
Our mission is to monitor extraterrestrial activity on Earth.
All right, so we're going to be talking about the Men in Black, and I can't get that Will Smith song out of my head, man. It's already there.
Well, the video with the alien dancing and stuff too.
Oh yeah,
the Mikey guy. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So what's really interesting is that Men in Black, which spawned 4 movies, right?
Yeah.
3 with Will Smith, and then 1 with Chris Hemsworth.
It's Chris. It's Chris.
Okay. Okay.
That's my wife's 3rd husband.
So 4 movies spawned from that, but all of that was really based off of the very popular comic book series from the Men in Black.
Right.
And then, of course, all of that is really based off of the mentions in the books of the 50s and 60s.
Right.
So there is, I think, when we talk through this, I think you'll see that there are some similarities to what the history is for the Men in Black and what the movies portray.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they definitely took their inspiration from that for sure.
So we're diving right into it here. In pop culture, for the USO, it's not Bob Hope out there dressed in black.
It could
be. Men in Black are supposed to be men dressed in black suits who claim to be a quasi-government agents who harass, threaten, or assassinate UFO witnesses to keep them quiet about what they have seen.
Mm-hmm. And Keel talks about that quite a bit. Those that came out with a lot of abduction sightings or UFO sightings or spoke about it always seem to mysteriously die within a few years.
Yeah, and usually from some weird health complications, and they were previously fit individuals.
Right.
So it wasn't like, the brake line was cut on their car or something. I mean, it was just
right.
It's like they died of seemingly natural causes, but it was unnatural for the fitness that they were in. So
correct.
So it's sometimes implied that they may be aliens themselves.
Right, which is something I learned while reading Keel's books.
Yeah, so, Mothman Prophecies and The Eighth Tower talk a lot about them having kind of like an olive complexion skin.
Yeah, like they referred to them as almost Asian looking.
Yeah, usually very slender. Some of the other things that I think they talk about in the Keel books are like they had to take pills
Oh yeah, the water they needed
Always
like
asking
lots of water.
glass of water so they could take a pill. I think in one of the points they talk about in the Mothman prophecies, like a documented interview with a man in black, and he started getting really red, and then
he couldn't get his pill. That's right.
Right, and then finally they gave him a glass of water, and he took his pill, and the redness went away.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like I think they theorized it was like some sort of like depressurization pill or gravity pill or something.
Well, and I'm gonna. This is a little bit off topic, but if we think about the book with visitors from Lanulos, and Ingrid Cold had to scare off the inhumanoids that fly around in the pink spaceships. Right. So we already know there's potentially the Lanulosians. I just butchered that word. The inhumanoids, and so there could be others. So the idea that this might not be actually the government, but actual some other alien race that wants to keep this stuff quiet.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Let's see. So the term is often frequently used to describe mysterious men working for unknown organizations, as well as various branches of government, allegedly designed to protect secrets or perform other strange activities. The term is generic, used for any unusual, threatening, or strangely behaved individual whose appearance on the scene can be linked in some fashion with a UFO sighting. Several alleged encounters with men in black have been reported by UFO researchers and enthusiasts.
Yep. Even that newspaper lady in Point Pleasant talked a lot about these strange looking olive-skinned men with black suits that would come in and ask if things had been reported. And
right. And I don't want to, hopefully, spoiler alert, anybody who hasn't read Mothman Prophecies, I can't remember if he talks about it at the end of that book or at the beginning of the Eighth Tower, but she also died, of just random, like natural causes. So, yeah.
Yeah, a number of the guys he talks about he lost.
Yep. Which is, I think, really interesting that Keel himself, in all of his writings, has never talked about his own encounters with the Men in Black.
Well, he talks a little bit about some encounters, like mostly just seeing a car or different things like that, but not like some of these other people have. Yeah.
Well, and not face to face is the point that I'm making.
Yeah, so, they weren't pressuring him or pressuring him.
They would impersonate him. They would call and cancel appointments or call and impersonate him to get more information. But he never actually had a situation where he was face to face with them.
Yeah,
and he lived to a ripe old age.
Yeah, his thing was more like being surveyed. Like, if you remember him talking about his telephone being tapped quite a bit, and then them pretending to be him and different things like that. Very, very interesting.
Yep. So it says that folklorist James R. Lewis compares accounts of Men in Black with tales of people encountering Lucifer and speculates that they can be considered a kind of psychological drama. So, and I'm not, so when I first read that, I was, I kind of went into a defensive state. Kind of like that he was saying, you're imagining it.
Right.
But I don't think that, so it's kind of like what we've talked about in the past with Darren Berger and his encounters and other people's encounters is, did they actually converse with them on the physical plane, or was it a mental projection?
Or even then, like we talked about, that's just what they were able to think about during their time, like the fairy sightings and things like that of the early, the late 1800s, and things like that.
Yeah,
that was all they could think about that it would be was it's got to be the devil. I mean, especially if you're looking again, I'm watching Outlander, and one of the characters is Chinese, and they do not know what to do with him. It's the, middle of the 1700s, and they've never seen a Chinese person, and so this is the same thing. It's like, so here you could imagine, 1600s or some crap like that. And here's an olive-skinned looking person in the middle of England.
Right.
It's like they wouldn't know what to do.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So,
so Men in Black figure prominently in ufology and UFO folklore. In the 1950s and 60s, ufologists adopted a wow, that is a long, weird word. Conspiratorial. There you go. Mindset, and began to fear they would be subject to organized intimidation and retaliation for discovering the truth of the UFOs. By the way, I'm still waiting for my Men in Black encounter. I feel like we press the envelope all the time, and I've never seen anybody following me. I've never seen random people working on my telephone line.
I was an altar boy, and I dealt with the Men in Black quite frequently. They call them priests. But yeah, I dealt with them all the time.
Yeah. So, in 1947, Harold Dahl, Dahl, in case somebody wanted to look it up, claimed to have been warned not to talk about his alleged UFO sighting on Maury Island by a man in a dark suit.
Wasn't that the same year as Roswell?
Yes.
So very interesting. Like, hey, we've already got some shit out there that we're going to be dealing with. We don't need you. We don't need you adding to it.
And it's really, we've speculated about this. I know other people have speculated about this as well. But this is, so 47 is just a few years after the first atomic bomb.
Right.
And there's a lot of speculation that when we first started working with, splitting the atom, that's when these intelligences took notice or interest in us.
Yeah, so. For sure.
So in the mid-1950s, a ufologist, Albert K. Bender, which we're going to get into Mr. Bender here in a little bit, claimed he was visited by men in dark suits who threatened and warned him not to continue investigating UFOs. Bender maintained that the Men in Black were secret government agents who had been given the task of suppressing evidence of UFOs.
It's so funny because, I'm more apt to believe that than I am the aliens. But that's because I believe in the aliens. It's like, I feel like that the government would be like, because they are, if you especially look into Project Blue Book, which we're going to be getting in the next week or so. And it's like, that they were out there, they were doing stuff, and that they were trying to cover shit up.
Yeah, but so I am of the mindset that there's more than one ET or UT faction at play here.
Yeah.
And I am also of the mindset that the ones that want to cover it up or suppress it are different from the ones who are actually you're seeing, you're witnessing, you're experiencing, whatever.
Right.
So, to what end, I don't know, but it could be that they want to suppress it because if the human race learns about them, they'll join them in their fight against them. Who knows? This is all very.
And then it could be very much, the government trying to use the tactics that the aliens were, or vice versa, that the aliens were trying to use the same tactics that the humans were as a way to infiltrate. So, it could be a column A and column B type thing.
Yeah, very much so. They could be working together. Who knows? Mm-hmm. So the ufologist John Keel, who we talked about a lot here, claimed to have encounters with the Men in Black and referred to them as the demonic supernaturals with dark skin and or exotic facial features. Mm-hmm. According to the ufologist Jerome Clark, reports of Men in Black represent experiences that don't seem to have occurred in the world of conscious reality.
Yeah. It's really interesting. And yeah, Keel definitely did. He's one of the first ones that I read that talked about not only was it olive skinned, but there was like a darker reddish skin as well in some of them, and that he thinks that, you know, maybe those go back. Maybe it was also talked about ancient aliens going back, that maybe that's, you know, the culture that they had first visited, you know, was an Asian culture or a Native American culture.
Or it could be that when Keel saw them and they were red-faced, it was because they hadn't taken their pill.
Yeah, that, or it was a drought, and it was hot.
Yeah, they were in Alabama. So
yep.
So the historian Aaron, I'm going to butcher this last name, Gulyas, Gulyas, Gulyas. Oh, we'll go with that.
Mm-hmm.
Wrote during the 1970s. 1980s and 1990s, UFO conspiracy theorists would incorporate the men in black into their increasingly complex and paranoid visions. So again, they're basically kind of saying that these people are already insane, so of course they would incorporate that there's something out to get them.
Yeah,
right?
that because it's already popular fiction, that it's already going to fit into their narrative, and I believe a little bit of that. I mean, you know, that's why a lot of times the police, when they're looking for a serial killer, will put out false information, because people will call in and claim to be the killer, and they'll just basically repeat the information that they heard on the news, and they know right then and there it wasn't them.
Right.
You know,
it's kind of talking a little bit, kind of backtrack just a little bit about the fact that is it government, or is it an alien faction, or is it both? I'm reminded of there was a point in one of the Keel books, I can't remember which, but he talks about how the cars that they rode around in, they never used any headlights, never used any taillights.
Mm-hmm.
They had license plates, but if you tried to run the plate, it would always come back as an unprinted license plate.
Yeah, or even sometimes anytime you would try to read the plate, you just weren't able to.
Yeah, but the unprinted plate really just boggles my mind, because that means it was never printed. It's not like they stole it off of another car.
Yeah, that means they made their own.
They made their own license plate. So, anyways, it was just again, the resources that would be required to do that does lend itself to be more government agency type thing.
Right.
But we also don't know the resources of an entity, alien entity race. So, yeah. In his article, this is in quotes, Gray Barker, my friend, the myth maker, John C. Sherwood, claims that in the late 1960s, at the age of 18, he cooperated when Gray Barker urged him to develop a hoax, which Barker subsequently published about what Barker called black men, 3 mysterious UFO inhabitants who silenced Sherwood's pseudonymous identity. So I don't know what to take of that.
Yeah, I don't either, especially because Gray being such a big advocate. I don't know. It also is interesting because it sounds very similar to the story of when Abraham meets God. There was 3 creatures, or 3 humanoids, so to speak.
Yeah,
were considered one. So very, very interesting.
Yeah. So, well, I mentioned earlier before about Albert Bender. So let's talk a little bit more about Albert Bender.
Not Bender from Futurama.
No. Although when I read his name, I do picture Bender from Futurama
every time, and
like a smoking jacket. I think there probably is a picture of Bender in a smoking jacket. I think I've seen that before. So, among the early victims of this evil silence group was Albert K. Bender of Bridgeport, Connecticut. In 1952, Bender formed the International Flying Saucer Bureau, or IFSB,
right,
which met with immediate success. But he shut it down the next year under mysterious circumstances. In due course, Bender confided that 3 men in black had imparted to him the terrifying answer to the UFO mystery and turned his life into a nightmare.
Interesting that 3 keeps coming up.
I know.
I go back to the Bible again, and I think about the 3 wise men who were there because there was a huge astronomical anomaly that was in the sky, and they show up right to where it's kind of pinpointed.
You know, I read this. I read something sometime. I don't remember when it was, but it's something about the psychological effect of convincing someone of something. And they said that if it's one-on-one, it's the subject who is trying to be convinced is oftentimes more skeptical that what the person is telling them is true. If it's 2-on-1, there's still some level of skepticism that the other person is not just going along with the story.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's 3-on-1, then they're more likely to believe the story because all 3 individuals are telling the same story. So it's just, again, I can't remember where I read that. I'll have to see if I can find an article that talks about it. But that maybe that's where maybe that's why 3 is there. Maybe that's why the writers of the Bible have 3. There's the Trinity is 3. You're more likely to believe it if it's 3.
Yeah.
So.
Well, comedy happens in 3. A lot of things are known to happen in 3. But you're right, though. The more when you have more than 2 people, people give it more credence. I mean, you look at Betty and Barney Hill. It was that, oh, well, they're just kind of in this, together. I don't know. But when you get into the Travis Walton experience, all of them passed that test. And people were like, oh, my God, that's why it's considered such a remarkable story, because there were so many of them.
Yep. Now take that 3 that I just talked about and really start thinking about the stuff that you watch or listen or read. And where there's 3, you really start to, I don't know, accept it more.
Mm-hmm.
Like Tom, the thing we just talked about with DeLonge and his, the thing that they did on the History Channel.
Yeah.
That was really 3 guys throughout the entire show. I mean, there was others that came and went, but it's really just those 3 guys.
Right. And it's 3 videos.
Yeah.
And there were 3 agencies that released it: To the Stars Academy, the Navy, and then the Pentagon.
So, yeah. What I'm picking up on all this is that we might need another co-host. That they had, basically. So, what's really interesting here, we spent a lot of time talking about 3, but what's really interesting in this sentence is that they convinced him to stop by telling him the truth, and he was terrified by it.
God, it's such an opposite story to Woody Derenberger.
Yeah.
He was told the truth, and he was enlightened by it all.
Again, did he encounter different race, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, there could be 2 or more truths to it. So he would say no more. 3 years later, an IFSB associate, Gray Barker, wrote a book about the episode. The title perfectly captured the paranoia abroad in UFO land, and it was called They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers.
Yes, that's the book I couldn't think of.
Through the Bender mystery, the legend of the Men in Black came into the world, even though, as Barker observed, a man in black had played a villainous role in the Maury Island incident. According to Barker, the MIB were ranging as far afield as Australia and New Zealand, scaring still more UFO buffs into silence. By the late 1980s, MIB tales had become sufficiently ubiquitous that the August Journal of American Folklore took note of them in a long article. Just who the MIB were remained uncleared. To Saucerians, enamored with conspiracy theories, they were enforcers for the Silence Group, associated with the international banking interest. You might recall that from our discussions a little bit on Mothman and Keel.
Yeah, that's something we haven't talked about in a while.
That sought to stifle the technological advances and moral reforms the Space Brothers wanted to bestow on Earthlings. To others, they were alien beings, perhaps, some speculated, Shavers Deros. I don't know what Shaver, I'll have to look that up. S-H-A-V-E.
Yeah. He was in, I believe, Alan Greenfield's book. They talk about him.
In 1962, Bender came down on the side of the alien school. So not government, but alien. Or not private, let's say. Breaking his 9-year silence in Flying Saucers and the Three Men, which he insisted was not a science fiction novel. Bender revealed that the men in black who drove him out of ufology were monsters from the planet Kazakh. Even Barker, the book's publisher and a relentless Bender promoter, remarked privately and out of customers' hearing that maybe it had all been a dream.
How do you spell Kazakh?
K-A-Z-I-K.
Oh, it's getting close to Kashyyyk, man, where Chewbacca's from, so I was just wondering.
I think
Kashyyyk, sorry.
As I say, I think it's pronounced Kashyyyk.
It's like all the places, man, that when I used to read the expanded universe, how I just, name whatever I want. Kashyyyk and Coruscant.
Yeah.
That's what I used to call it.
Coruscant, where women are scantily clad.
There's also a place in France, I don't know if you know this, where the naked ladies dance.
Yeah. Well, they were going to call it Coruscant, but they just didn't want to. Anyways, fear of the MIB was generated in part by worries about the possible hostile motives of UFOs. A popular early book, Flying Saucers on the Attack by Harold T. Wilkins in 1954, fretted that a cosmic general staff could even now be plotting a real-life war of the worlds. But next to demonologist, ufologist John A. Keel, author of UFOs, Operation Trojan Horse, that's the one I'm working my way through right now, that was written in 1970, Wilkins sounded like an optimist. In Keel's rendering, UFO intelligences are not simply extraterrestrials, but ultra-terrestrials, entities from unimaginable other dimensions of reality. Worse, they definitely do not like us at all.
Interesting.
It says Keel thunders are like ants trying to view reality with very limited perceptive equipment. We are biochemical robots helplessly controlled by forces that can scramble our brains, destroy our memories, and use us in any way they see fit. They have been doing it to us forever. And I have read that in The Eighth Tower, as well as in Operation Trojan Horse. That basically we lack, in his mind, gets into the whole super spectrum and everything, but we lack the understanding to be able to do anything more with the super spectrum other than to receive, kind of like if you think about a radio, we can receive transmissions, but we can't transmit our own things.
Right.
So after 9 years, so this is a key takeaway, after 9 years of shutting everything down, he broke his silence and revealed the truth. And Flying Saucers and the Three Men, that's definitely have to go on the read list. Because that's where, it says that they were monsters from the planet Kazakh. So,
what was the name of that book again?
Flying Saucers and the Three Men.
Right.
All right, so I've got one more thing to talk about as it relates to the Men in Black, and this is actually a more recent encounter. In 1987, writing in the respected Journal of American Folklore, Peter M. I'm going to That's this thing. Rodskowitz.
Rod Stewart.
It's ROJCEWICZ.
Oh, all right.
Okay, you're not even going to try, are you?
Nope. I believe in you.
Examined folk concepts and beliefs in other worlds as they related to the Men in Black. One classic tale of a Men in Black involved a man with the pseudonym Michael Elliott. One afternoon, as Elliott sat in a university library immersed in UFO literature, a thin, dark-featured man approached him. Speaking in a slight accent, the man asked Elliott what he was reading about. Flying saucers, Elliott replied, adding that he had no particular interest in their reality or unreality, just in the stories told about them. The stranger shouted, "Flying saucers are the most important fact of the century, and you're not interested." Then the man stood up, as if mechanically lifted, spoke gently, "Go well in your purpose," and departed. When Elliott went to follow the man, he found the library eerily deserted. A year or two after this article appeared, Rodskowitz, the guy's name I can't pronounce, confessed that he was Michael Elliott.
Wow.
That kind of reminds me of the other thing that they talk about with when these Men in Black talk. They always use the descriptor in a sing-song voice.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
And is that so? Like in the audiobook, because I do a lot of these things in audiobooks. In the audiobook that I listen to, there's a part where the narrator or the person reading the book speaks in the tone of the Men in Black, and using the descriptor of a sing-song voice, it sounds kind of like this. It's like, "Well, you know that we really want to see you." So, like, is that a sing-songy voice? I don't know. I've never.
It is a sing-songy voice, but I mean,
Okay.
You could think of, "Hello, what are you doing?" That's more
Okay.
But yeah, that is also sing-songy.
Okay. So it's almost like A, they don't understand syntax of language, or B, or both, in that they don't understand or speak the language, and so they've only learned what they need to learn to communicate. People like travel abroad and only learn certain words in the language of wherever they're going, probably don't use it correctly.
Right.
They don't use the accents correctly. They don't use the inflection correctly. So, yeah. So yeah, that's our report on the Men in Black.
Interesting. So, what is your consensus then?
So, I mean, there's too many reports of encounters to dismiss it as, to dismiss it as somebody making something up. If and I would say too many similarities in the encounters. I mean, in today's world, if you saw all those similarities, you would say, well, somebody read the post on Facebook, and they incorporated that into their story. But when all this stuff was going down, predominantly it was in the mid to late 60s, and we didn't have the internet. We didn't. There were newspapers, sure, and journals and things like that. But all that stuff took time to write, to print, to distribute, to circulate, so on and so forth. So to have accounts that are captured within short periods of time of one another, and have the details of those accounts be so exact or similar, I think it's hard to dispute it as anything other than an actual account of an encounter.
Yeah. And I look at it as the movies are perfect, because I mean, it's like you do a quick Google search on Men in Black and the first 10 pages are about the movies.
Yep.
You talk about deflection. There's a perfect deflection. You even bring up Men in Black. Nobody thinks about the horror that it used to bring them back in the 60s and 70s. Now they think of Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones. That's what they think of. And it's just remarkable. It's absolutely phenomenal. If they are out there doing that stuff, how well they do it.
Well, and we've talked about this before. Is the spike in UFO related or alien related media, so movies, TV shows, all and so forth, is all of that again trying to think the word to say to I'm blanking on the word, basically lessen our decrease our sensitivity to it.
Yeah, for sure. Desensitize us.
Thank you. So is it, but then again, for potentially more than one purpose. So one, to desensitize us to, if it actually does happen, we're less likely to react poorly. Or two, to desensitize us so that if it does happen, no one really will pay attention to it. They'll just think it's a hoax or a movie or whatever the case may be. So
or a swamp gas.
It was a weather balloon. So
exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely in the 60s. Yes. But are they still around? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. You just don't
hear about it.
Right. But I mean, then again, how could we know when it's anything, hashtag Men in Black is going to be about a movie?
Yeah.
It's like those sightings now get buried.
Yep.
I don't know. That would be interesting to do some research into trying to find the most recent Men in Black sightings.
I mean, if anybody listening has had an encounter with the Men in Black, we would love to hear about it.
Yeah, that is definitely something we have not had. And my buddy Mark and I, man, we talked quite extensively in high school about the Men in Black. Every day on our bus, we talked a lot about them. He had claimed to had some visitors and some things like that. And I don't know if that was just high school kids or what, but that's where I really drummed up my interest in them, was daily talking to him about that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we have a, it's not a huge audience, but we have a pretty respectable audience, and we talk about this kind of stuff pretty much every week. And we have some pretty crazy ideas out there, and people watch us on YouTube and things. And so if there was a concern that we are, impacting some message that some agency has put, I feel like we would have gotten something by now. Like, I just feel like, I would have seen a random car that I shouldn't have seen, or something that was out of place, or like I said, somebody working on a telephone pole close to my house or something. I just feel like that would have happened if they were still around. So either they're not still around anymore, or they are, and they've just changed their tactics.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I did a quick Google search through news, and I don't even know about this. This was reported June 13th in 2017. This comes from Muscatine County in Iowa, where they say that mysterious Men in Black sightings reported along Muscatine County roadways, that a number of people over like the course of a year or so kept seeing a man in a black trench coat walking down the paved road. But even then, I mean, it could have just been some kid.
Well, it could have been a transient. I mean,
yeah. So
people, there are people who hitchhike across the country still, and just don't really have a home to speak of. They just kind of move around the country, and it could have been one of, and I guess that's the thing, right? What's really interesting here in my statement that I just made, and your statement too, is that we didn't just say, oh yeah, for sure that was a Men in Black sighting, right?
Right.
We dismissed it as it could have been something else.
Right. I didn't even realize it. But yeah, I mean, Interesting. I'm gonna definitely do some research and see if I can find some more. If I can find any more recent, I'll try to bring them next week. But yeah, I mean, that's our Men in Black. And again, I want to reiterate, if anybody has any other stories or any theories that we didn't cover, send them our way. I really like the old antiquated folklore that, you know, those encounters with the devil were actually Men in Black. That's a very interesting thought. Yeah, it makes you wonder how long they've been around. And you know, how long before they start showing up at our door? That's the question. That's the question that anybody that gets into this stuff always asks is what about then? But speaking of stories, I want to go ahead and get into our listener story for the week. Got a good one here. Gonna get back into some ghosty stuff. But this one comes from, her name is Yolonda Olsen-Martinez, and she's from Georgia. So this actually comes from Georgia. And she's a member of the Haunted Paranormal Facebook group. But her story is pretty cool. And we've got our good friend, Nayoma Miller, is the actor portraying Yolanda this week. So big thank you to Nayoma. You know, we used to work with her over at WCHQ. She's had an episode, Getting Spooky with Nayoma. You know, she went on the Bardstown.
Yep, Bardstown with us. Yep.
And she's just a bundle of awesomeness and psychic as all get out. So I'm really thankful for that. But yeah, here is that story again from Yolonda Olsen-Martinez.
My name is Yolanda Olsen-Martinez, and I live in Georgia. 5 years ago, we just moved into a house, and it was around Halloween time, and I was putting makeup on my daughter while we were sitting in the dining room. And I was facing a window that showed the backyard. While I'm doing her makeup, I noticed something kind of flash through the yard. It's white, it has half a head, shoulders, arms, no hands, the body with no legs, and it zooms by like it's running. Thought it was weird, but I kind of blew it off. Maybe I'm just seeing stuff. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. I don't know. So a few months had passed, and my son was taking out the garbage in the middle of the night. And the place where our garbage can is sitting is on the side of our house, which is the exact spot where I saw the white figure running to. So he's out there, it's the middle of the night, and he comes running back, saying he saw something white and that it had scared him. I didn't say anything about what I had seen because I didn't want to scare him any more than he already was. So I finished taking out the trash for him. Then, maybe like a year later, my daughter was letting the dogs out at night, and she started screaming that she saw someone in the backyard. I kind of glanced around in the backyard, and I said, I don't see anybody. And obviously there's nobody in the backyard because the dogs would be going crazy if there was. Also, we have a fenced-in backyard, so it's less likely that somebody would just be walking by. So to clarify what my daughter had seen, I was like, okay, tell me what they were wearing. And she said they didn't have any clothes on. They were just all white. So it sounded exactly like the thing that I had seen and the thing that my son had seen. So I called my husband down, and my son had the idea to give us all a piece of paper and a pen and to have us draw the white thing that we had seen. Well, it was... every single one of us drew the same thing. We all did. We all drew the same thing. So obviously we were all seeing the same thing, but we're all seeing it at different times. And I mean, that's a little unsettling to me. So a little bit later, we hadn't seen anything for a little bit, but a water leak in our roof had happened, and my husband went up to fix it, and he found a bullet around where the leak was. I'm not sure if that has any relevance to the white figure that we've all seen or not, but it's strange that he saw it up there. Not only have we seen that white thing, but I have also seen things out of the corner of my eyes, like little black things. Sometimes it's like popping around the corner, and I just kind of see it for a split second and it's gone. We have stuff coming up missing all the time, and it's never to be found again. Like, we have searched high and low in our house, and we can't find anything. For example, we have 3 welding sets that have gone missing. 3. Those are big. That's hard to lose. We hang things on our light next to our bed now to kind of keep track of where we're putting things. And we've even gotten to the point where we've removed our carpet and put wood flooring down, and we still can't find things. My daughter's gym bag went missing, shoes and shorts in it. My son's gaming adapter's gone missing. A lot of things have gone missing. A lot. So here is my question to you. Why is the entity outside white and the ones inside my house are black? And why are all of our things going missing?
It's a very good question, Yolanda. The ones inside that are black, those black entities tend to be a little more trickstery. Even Vashti said that, those tend to be evil or demonic. And we've heard that before as well. And if they are indeed tricksters, they're going to steal your stuff, Yeah.
And what's really interesting, I think, is that I don't know how much that I would say evil or demonic, because I don't want to necessarily scare anybody, but
Correct.
But trickster doesn't necessarily imply evil.
No, not at all.
Right. So for example, my granddaddy, when he was alive, he loved to prank people all the time. And so, I've had things happen where it's like, I feel like he's here and he's just pulling a little prank on me, So just being a prankster, not necessarily an evil thing.
Well, and even then, if you're trying to pull a prank, you don't want to be seen, and being black in the night is a lot better than being a bright white light.
Right. So, and that gets to another point that we talked about before with spirits, is that they when they want to be seen, they make themselves be seen. And so, if it's in the middle of the night and a dark shadow runs by, you're not going to see it. If it's the middle of the night and a bright white, energy spirit or whatever runs by, you're going to see that. So, I think it's just. These things are just they're making themselves known. They're just saying, "Hey, we're here. Pay attention to us." I think
it could be one singular entity as well. I mean, no one's seen multiple. They've just, in fact, the woman in white that's outside, they've all seen the same. Listening to that story, I didn't hear things like, I saw multiple images at once.
Yeah.
It could be the same entity, and while outside, this is going to sound really kind of cool, but what if it's reflecting the moonlight? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, and I have thought about that a lot, is that it seems like a lot of entities or even a lot of let's say ghost encounters tend to happen on nights when it's either a full moon or a brightly shining moon.
Yeah.
And it is it one of those things where the moonlight helps to illuminate those things? So
we don't know. We don't know what kind of radiation in terms of parapsychology and things like that. We don't know.
We don't.
We don't know.
But we like to speculate. So,
but one thing I will say, Yolanda, is that I'm glad that it doesn't seem like anyone's being harmed. Yes, it is a big deal that welding sets, because I know those aren't cheap, are coming up missing, and that sucks. And I suggest getting yourself into a state of meditation or a calm down area and just speaking to them, and then asking them, hey, we acknowledge that you're here. Can you please stop doing that? You don't need to do that for us to know that you're here. Might be a way to do something.
It's like I think I shared the story back a few episodes back. I had that the children's book show up in my bed at my grandparents' house, in the room where a boy that lived in that room had died. And so I read him the book, and then after that, activity dropped off. So it's maybe just that acknowledgement that we understand. You don't have to try to get our attention anymore. We know. Right.
And you don't know. That spirit could have died in a fire, and it's scared of things that produce fire. Who knows? We don't know. We don't know without bringing in, a legit medium or things along that line. But I'd definitely be interested to hear if she has any more stories later on. So be checking in with her again.
For sure.
But yeah, just a reminder that you can find us on the many Facebook groups that we are on, and send us your story. You can PM us right there on Facebook, as well as emailing us at fearscapepodcast@gmail.com. Send us your stories. We oftentimes get stories sent straight to there. You can also record them, or we can have our actors or one of us portray that like we've been doing. But yeah, we love those stories. We want to believe you. We want to share these stories. We share this every week. We share a story to let people know that they're not alone.
Yep.
So,
like many people have said, or guests have said, it's a community.
Yep.
And we want to make sure that you're welcome in this community, and we are certainly glad to have you. So,
yep, absolutely. We want to get out of here, but before we do, want to make sure to remind people that you can find us on our website. That's www.fearscapepodcast.com. There you'll find links to our Facebook, our Instagram, our Twitter, as well as our YouTube channel, where we've got separate content that's on there. There's our show FearScape Unhinged, as well as just some interesting things that we come across when we do Estes methods or different things like that. Be on the lookout for our YouTube channel. And all of those things can be found at FearScape Pod. But Josh, tell them about our Patreon.
Yeah. So again, if you go over to fearscapepodcast.com, you can click on Patreon there, and we have a couple, or I think 4 different tiers. And, if you like the content that we bring you, you like listening to us, we certainly like bringing this content to you. Please consider help supporting us by maybe a monthly donation or a monthly contribution. At the 3rd level and 4th level, if you stud up for those 3, or those 2, you also get to pick out one of our awesome T-shirts available in our store.
That's right. And I have been going insane creating T-shirts. There is so much T-shirt content. We're doing our hide and seek line with all sorts of different cryptids. Look for those. Created a T-shirt with my sister, Kelly Lolio, who I told you guys about. I've just recently been in contact with. We created one based off of a picture she took of a spooky demon-looking tree, and just all sorts of cool stuff. So get on there and get yourself a T-shirt. That also helps us out. And just, again, thank you guys so much for listening. And of course, the best thing that you can always do is, rate and review and share the hell out of the show.
Yep.
So, but on that, Josh, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. We need to get the dinner ready just in case the Men in Black come by.
Yep.
Not the Men in Black ties. Those are Mormons. So those are different.
Yeah. So. I don't think they've ever had a report of the Men in Black on bicycles.
No. Well, maybe before cars. I don't know.
Yeah, well, maybe, yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Thank you guys for tuning in to FearScape Paranormal Podcast. My name is Stefan, and I will catch you guys on the flip side.
Hey, this has been Josh, and the truth is out there.
And remember, folks, hold those blankets extra tight, because things tend to get spooky when you listen to FearScape. All right, good night, everybody.
Good night.
I'm so glad you were able to join us for that horrifying discussion. I hope they didn't frighten you too much. Tune in next week for even more research into the nightmarish and haunting creeps and spooks that we tell ourselves don't exist, but we know they do. Make sure you have your blankets, that you hold them extra tight. Next time on FearScape.